Good afternoon. Today we are going to do a book talk on fantasy novels. So I've chosen 5 fantasy novels that we will talk about. But before we do that, we need to understand what makes a novel a fantasy novel. So a fantasy novel is any book that contains unrealistic settings such as magical kingdoms, dark forests, all those places that we know don't really exist. And they also contain magic. They are usually set in a medieval time period, and they have supernatural forms of the plot, theme, or the setting. So the 5 books that we're going to look at today is Snow White and the Huntsman by Lily Blake, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah Mays, Maleficent by Elizabeth Rudnick, The Curse of the 13th Fray, The True Tale of Sleeping Beauty by Jane Yolen, and Terminus by Joshua Graham. 2 books are remakes of Sleeping Beauty, which are Maleficent and The Curse of the 13th Fray, The True Tale of Sleeping Beauty. They're both remakes of Sleeping Beauty, which it's important because we know that classic stories such as Sleeping Beauty, people still love them. We still love to read them. We still like to watch the movies. We still love them. So it's awesome that people made a new spin on those old novels, and teenagers can now enjoy a different remake of the classics. So yeah, we are going to talk about Snow White and the Huntsman first, and Lily Blake wrote this book. So Snow White is the daughter of King Magnus and Queen Eleanor. The queen passes away, and the king remarries a lady that he saved from the Dork army, Ravina. And she's immoral, and she kills the king. She's not a very nice lady. She kills the king after he rescued her. She tries to take over his kingdom, and the Duke Hammond, and his son William are able to escape the castle, but they have to leave behind Snow White. She couldn't escape. Well, after learning that Snow White can ruin Ravina, she orders her to be locked in a castle, and at the top of the castle, and so that she can basically consume her heart to keep her immorality and her beauty up, because she doesn't want to get old and ugly. So she does that, and the Snow White is able to escape, and she runs into the dark forest where they send a huntsman out to get her. But the huntsman realizes that he was lied to by Ravina whenever she told him that she can bring back his wife from the dead and revive her. She only told him that so that he can go and get Snow White. But when he learns that she was lying and she can't really do all those things, he ends up trying to help Snow White. So it's a really good book. And obviously it's fantasy because we have the dark forest, we have immorality, we have people eating hearts to stay young and beautiful, which, oh gosh, we don't do that. That would be horrible. So thank God it's a fantasy novel. But it's really good. Teenagers love it. The next book that we can look at is The Curse of the 13th Fae, A True Tale of Snow White. And who wrote this again? I think that was written by Jane Yolen. Okay, so The Curse of the 13th Fae. I'm going to give you a brief summary of it. Gorse is the 13th and youngest in a family of fairies, and they're tied to the evil king's land, and they have to do his biddings, which means that whatever he tells them to do, they absolutely have to do. Well, he has a daughter, and her name is Tyron, and the king orders them to bring her a gift. Well, she's a sick person, Gorse, like not mentally, like physically, she's sick. So she's running fever, but she realizes she has to go bring the king's daughter a gift. Well, on the way to bring her the gift, she runs into kind of like a dark forest, and the gift that she was going to give her was a thread, which would be like everlasting life, and the thread gets cut, and accidentally she gives the king's daughter a death wish, basically saying that at the age of 15 the daughter is going to pass away. So it's a book about trying to redo the curse and save people. So obviously this is a fantasy novel because I mean, we can't give people gifts of life, of long lives, and we definitely can't give people a gift of dying at a young age, which is not really even a gift. But yeah, that's fantasy. That's not real. It's not gonna happen. The next book is Maleficent, which is written by Elizabeth Rudnick. I really enjoyed this book. So it's about Maleficent, who is a really good fairy. She has her own little town called Moors, and a king tries to take over town, and she doesn't want that to happen, so she injures him, and he wants her dead. And this guy named Stefan goes and clips her wings, and it's a battle because they had like a connection when they were younger. And when King Stefan has a daughter, Maleficent, as revenge, orders the daughter to prick her hands and sleep for 100 years, I think it is. And sleep for 100 years. Oh yes. And but Maleficent really actually realizes that she loves Aurora, and she's the one that actually gives her the true love's kiss at the end of the novel. Let's see, the next book that we can talk about is Terminus, and that is by Joshua Graham, and it's about Nikolai, who's an angel, and he's a multi-layered character. He's actually a Grim Reaper whose job is to collect the souls of the newly departed, and he finds it boring. He needs a challenge. But when he has to collect the soul of a very young girl, he figures that it isn't fair. He eventually falls in love with a mother named Hope, and so yeah, he's willing to sacrifice everything for her love. And obviously Grim Reapers are not real, that's fantasy. And it's a battle between like good angels and bad angels, and he's immoral, and then he loves a human being, and it's a hot mess, but it's a really good story. It's interesting. It was really interesting. It has a lot of good ratings. People liked it. The next story that we could talk about is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah Mace, and this is basically a redo of Beauty and the Beast, but it's not similar at all. But it's kind of based off of it, I guess you can say. So it's about Fair is her name. She goes hunting and she tries to kill a doe because her family's starving, and a great wolf attacks the doe first. So she's angry. She wanted to eat the deer, so she kills the wolf instead. Well, the wolf is actually a mythical creature, and his family is trying to get revenge on her for killing him. So they said that instead of her dying or them killing her, she has to go live with them, and she eventually falls in love with their leader and all kind of stuff, which obviously animals are not humans at the same time. Like, we can't go and turn into a wolf. That's fantasy, obviously. But so it's kind of like Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast, not beef. She ends up falling in love with him, with her captor, basically. So I think we did have the novels. Yes. So these novels are all fantasy novels. They have dark forest, they have magic, they have all these fantasy things that are not real, but it's a really good escape for young adults. To just escape the real world and think about all these things, and I don't know, maybe pretend like they're actually in the fantasy land and that they have magical powers, and it's good. It's good for them. So these books are basically for people ages 12 and over. And I really would recommend them. They should be in any library. There's public, private school, it doesn't matter. In public library, parents should have no problem with their children reading these books. They need to be exposed to these types of things. So yes, that is my book talk.